How good was Eden Hazard? Just a few weeks back, Belgian manager Roberto Martinez promised the world that they would be seeing a totally different Eden Hazard, from the one that struggled for fitness since swapping Stamford Bridge to Santiago Bernabeu. The Belgian winger's biggest dream was to one day play for Real Madrid, and although he provided nearly 7 years of loyal service to Chelsea, the London Giants were always a stepping stone. But things went totally south for the player and his club, and this is why Martinez's statements are a little surprising. The Belgian boss says Real Madrid are set to see a very different type of Eden Hazard next season and shed some light on the mental and physical condition of the player he's known for a very long time. He's obsessed with succeeding at Real Madrid, Martinez said of Hazard. He has not thought about changing his objective. He wants to win the World Cup. When you have a player capable of making a difference, whatever happens, it's going to be positive. Normally, managers are loyal to a fault when it comes to their struggling star player, so reading into much of these statements might be considered folly. There's also a chance that the Spanish tactician knows something that we don't. So as a reminder, it would make sense to talk about how good Eden Hazard actually was before he moved to Real Madrid and experienced the nightmare scenario of recurring injuries. To really know how good the Belgian was, we need to go back to the year 2007, when he started out as a precarious young talent for Lille's B team. At that time, Hazard was football's best-kept secret. At the age of 16, he was promoted to the reserve team before then-manager Claude Puel decided to call him up to play a friendly game against Belgian Giants club Bruges. He was given a few minutes on the pitch, but that was much time enough for Puel to include him in his 18-man squad to face Nancy Lorraine in a League One encounter. Following his debut in the same game, Hazard returned to the reserves, but things were changing and the young winger's ability to do things on the pitch most senior players wouldn't dare to do ensured that the future was bright. By the end of his first campaign in League One, Hazard's performances had alerted some of the biggest teams in Europe, with the likes of Manchester United, Arsenal, Inter Milan, Real Madrid, and Barcelona reportedly declaring their interest in the player. However, both Lille and the player decided that it was too early for him to leave his apprenticeship in France. A diminutive winger with explosive pace and control, Eden Hazard was one of the most technically gifted players in France, and word of his exploits had now started traveling far and beyond. During a Europa League game against Genoa in 2010, Hazard dribbled past 6 defenders before finishing things up. That goal was a great example of how coaches expect modern-day wingers to behave, cutting inside and taking on defenders before entering the final third. Not a lot of players actually have the skill or even imagination to do such thing, but Hazard was never just any other player. The Belgian was simply born with the ability to take on defenders, dribble past him at great speed, and all the while making his full use of his low center of gravity. Throughout his time in France, Hazard was seen making a mockery of the best defenses the league had to offer. After guiding Lille to a League One title in 2011, Hazard was linked with a move away from France. However, the winger decided to stay put and help his team do big things in the Champions League. Following another successful season where he won French Player of the Year for a second year in a row, Hazard officially confirmed that he will be signing for Chelsea for a fee reported in the region of £32 million. While he did attract interest from other teams, his heart was set on the Blues, especially after seeing them lift the Champions League title for the first time ever. Now, a move to England was always going to be a big jump. While he did have his own way with the defenders in France, things in the Premier League were never going to be that easy. However, Eden Hazard was totally unfazed by all of that, and in fact, he upped his game the moment he moved across the channel. While defenders were proving to be unforgiving, Hazard was clearly ready for what was coming his way. Following a largely successful first season in England, we saw a very different Hazard show up for preseason. The Belgian international was no longer a player who would be outmuscled by his opponents. Clearly, he had spent a lot of time in the gym, bulking up and getting ready to hold his own. After winning the Young Player of the Year in 2014, it was clear that Hazard was going to be a major player for years to come. The process was expedited by Juan Mata's departure from Manchester United. Hazard was given the number 10 shirt and in 2015 signed a new deal. Big players are made in tough situations. One of the biggest traits of a special player is that they can create something out of nothing. And that's exactly what Hazard did throughout his time in England. Every season, we saw Hazard continue developing at an astonishing rate. He was no longer a player focused on exciting the audience. While in his first few years in professional football, he would prefer to take on defenders and try to do things on his own. The Belgian had now become much more mature in his decision-making. During the 2018-19 campaign, Hazard became only the 4th player in Premier League history to register 15 goals and 15 assists in a single season. The increasing amount of assists showed that there was willingness from within to help others around him to do well. And while his ability to terrorize defenses never went away, Hazard had now become a more rounded player who was playing the game with freedom while also acting as a leader on the pitch. A move to Real Madrid for €100 million was something that was eventually going to happen, but that's when things started going horribly wrong for him. After making a few appearances for his new club, Hazard suffered an ankle injury in a Champions League encounter against PSG. That injury put him on the shelf for 16 games. He made a return to first team, but was simply not ready for things. While he struggled a lot with his fitness during his time in Spain, we have seen more than enough of Hazard to be confident that the same player who enjoys such a legendary status in France and England is still there and only needs a good preseason and self-belief to return to his usual best. Of course, it's never going to be easy since Vinicius Jr. had made Hazard's preferred position his own. The young Brazilian had been a live wire, which means that Carlo Ancelotti might have to think about an alternative position from the club's marquee signing from 2 years ago. At the same time, Hazard will also be focused on perhaps learning a new role. At the age of 31, we no longer expect Hazard to remain a winger who would take on opposing defenders and make those darting runs that we've become so accustomed to for almost a decade. However, what is within the realms of possibility is that Hazard can become an advanced playmaker who can not only be the creative focus ahead of Luka Modric, but also someone who can guarantee 10+ goals every season. But then again, it remains to be seen whether Ancelotti and company are also thinking along the same lines.